All right, picking up on chapter 12, Darkness. Sidney Carton paused in the street, not quite decided where to go. At Tellson's banking house at 9, he said, with a musing face. Shall I do well in the meantime to show myself? I think so. It is best that these people should know there is such a man as I here. It is a sound precaution and may be necessary preparation. But care, let me think it out. Okay, so here, Carton is deciding that he's talking to himself, and he's deciding that he needs to like walk around and show people that there is someone like himself in the town. What that means is that someone who looks so much like Charles Darnay. So we don't know what his plan is yet, but we know that it has something to do with having with looking so much like Charles Darnay. Picking up with checking. Checking his steps, which had begun to tend towards an object, he took a turn or two in the already darkening street, and traced the thought in his mind to its possible consequences. His first impression was confirmed. It is best, he said, finally resolved, that these people should know there is such a man as I here. And he turned his face towards Saint Antoine. Defarge had described himself that day as the keeper of a wine shop in the Saint Antoine suburb. It was not difficult for one who knew the city well to find his house without asking any questions. Having ascertained its situation, Carton came out of those closer streets again and dined at a place of refreshment, and fell sound asleep after dinner. For the first time in many years he had no strong drink. So this is the first night in many, many years that he doesn't get drunk. Since last night he had taken nothing but a little light thin wine, and last night he had dropped the brandy slowly down on Mr. Lorry's hearth like a man who had done with it. It was as late as 7 o'clock when he awoke refreshed, and went out into the street again. As he passed along towards Saint Antoine, he stopped at a shop window, where there was a mirror and slightly altered the disordered arrangement of his loose cravat and his coat collar and his wild hair. This done, he went on direct to Defarge's and went in. So here he's going to the Defarge wine shop in Saint Antoine, mostly because if anybody needs to know that there is a man who looks like Charles Darnay, it is the Defarges. They're the ones who are set on the idea that Darnay needs to die. There happened to be no customer in the shop, but Jacques Three of the restless fingers and the croaking voice. This man, whom he had seen upon the jury, stood drinking at the little counter, in conversation with the Defarges, man and wife. The Vengeance assisted in the conversation like a regular member of the establishment. As Carton walked in, took his seat, and asked, in very indifferent French, for a small measure of wine, Madame Defarge cast a careless glance at him, and then a keener, and then a keener, and then advanced to him herself and asked him what it was he had ordered. He repeated what he had already said. English? Asked Madame Defarge inquisitively, raising her dark eyebrows. After looking at her as if the sound of even a single French word were slow to express himself to him, he answered in his former strong foreign accent, Yes, madam, yes, I am English. So here we learned much earlier in book the third that Carton, well, I guess it wasn't really much earlier, it was a couple chapters ago, that Carton speaks fluent French. He did some schooling in France, so he has a sophisticated French accent, knows French very well, but here he's pretending not to. Madame Defarge returned to her counter to get the wine, and as he took up a Jacobin journal and feigned to pore over it, puzzling out its meanings, he heard her say, I swear to you, like Evrémonde. Defarge brought him the wine and gave him good evening. How? Good evening. Oh, good evening, citizen, filling his glass. Aha, and good wine. I drink to the Republic. Defarge went back to the counter and said, Certainly a little like. Madame sternly retorted, I tell you, a good deal like. Jacques Three pacifically remarked, He is so much in your mind, see you, madame. The amiable Vengeance added with a laugh, Yes, my faith, and you are looking forward with so much pleasure to seeing him once more tomorrow. So here Madame Defarge notices the similarities, but everybody else basically says that it's not really that noticeable. They don't look that much alike, and she's just kind of obsessed with Darnay. That's why she's seeing him in Carton's face here. Carton followed the lines and words of his paper with a slow forefinger and with a studious and absorbed face. They were all leaning their arms on the counter close together, speaking low. After a silence of a few moments, during which they all looked towards him without disturbing his outward attention from the Jacobin editor, they resumed their conversation. "It is true what Madame says," observed Jacques Three. "Why stop? There is a great force in that. Why stop?" "Well," reasoned Defarge, "but one must stop somewhere. After all, the question is still where." So here, you have Jacques Three say, he does look a lot like him. Why stop with just Charles Darnay? Why not go for anybody who looks like Charles Darnay? And Defarge says, well, I mean, we got to stop somewhere. We can't just kill everybody. And that was kind of one of the problems with the revolution, is that they did kind of start just killing everybody. So he says, the question is, where do we stop? At extermination, said Madame. Magnificent, croaked Jacques Three. The vengeance also highly approved. Extermination is good doctrine, my wife, said Defarge, rather troubled. In general. I say nothing against it. But this doctor has suffered much. You have seen him today. You have observed his face when the paper was read. I have observed his face, repeated Madame, contemptuously and angrily. Yes, I have observed his face. I have observed his face to be not the face of a true friend of the Republic. Let him take care of his face. So here, Madame Defarge is now starting to turn on Dr. Manette. He's not a friend of the Republic, she says. And you have observed my wife, said Defarge in a deprecatory manner, the anguish of his daughter, which must be a dreadful anguish to him. I have observed his daughter, repeated Madame. Yes, I have observed his daughter, more times than one. I have observed her today, and I have observed her other days. I have observed her in the court, and I have observed her in the street by the prison. Let me but lift my finger. She seemed to raise it. The listener's eyes were always on his paper, and to let it fall with a rattle on the ledge before her, as if the axe had dropped. The citizeness is superb, croaked the juryman. She is an angel, said the vengeance, and embraced her. As to thee, pursued Madame, implacably addressing to her husband, if it depended on you, which happily it does not, you would rescue this man even now. No, protested Defarge, not if to lift this glass would do it. But I would leave the matter there. I say stop there. See you then, Jacques, said Madame Defarge wrathfully, and see you too, my little vengeance. See you both. Listen. For other crimes as tyrants and oppressors, I have this race a long time on my register, doomed to destruction and extermination. Ask my husband, is that so? It is so, assented Defarge, without being asked. In the beginning of the great days when the Bastille falls, he finds this paper of today, and he brings it home, and in the middle of the night, when this place is clear and shut, we read it, here on this spot, by the light of this lamp. Ask him, is it so? It is so, assented Defarge. That night I tell him, when the paper is read through and the lamp is burnt out and the day is gleaming in above those shutters and between those iron bars, that I have now a secret to communicate. Ask him, is that so? It is so, assented Defarge. I communicate to him that secret. I smite this bosom with these two hands as I smite it now, and I tell him, Defarge, I was brought up among the fishermen of the seashore. And that peasant family, so injured by the two Evermond brothers, as that Bastille paper described, is my family. Defarge, that sister of the mortally wounded boy upon the ground, was my sister. That husband was my sister's husband. That unborn child was their child. That brother was my brother. That father was my father. Those dead are my dead. And that summons to answer for those things descends to me. Ask him, is that so? It is so, assented Defarge once more. So here we find out that Madame Defarge this whole time has been very preoccupied with Charles Darnay and exterminating his whole race. And now we find out why. She is the little sister who got spirited away to safety. The woman that Charles Darnay's dad killed is Madame Defarge's sister. The brother is her sister. The father is her father. She has been supremely injured by the Evermond family and has decided to seek revenge. And she wants the entire race of Evermonds to die out. That doesn't stop with Charles. That stops with little Lucy.